Oh, we are live at 11:05. I think it's 11:05. We almost forgot about you. I was busy and the boys started going to lunch, and Josh, I went and said him, and I think you forgot about us too, didn't you?
Yeah, I was right in the middle of working up an estimate for a turnkey for a customer, so
We're here. We made it. Maybe not 11:05, but it's close to. I'm BC, Spirit Cars, and Josh, the voice of Spirit Cars. You talked to him behind the computer. He's behind the camera right now. We got Kevin's car. If you were with us last week, we were painting Kevin's car. We talked about the foundation and the primer underneath, and then getting it to the sealer, and then the paint, and then clear on top of the paint. So we got the body painted. Going to put the doors on. We got the decklet and that painted. Then we talked about the frame. We did talk about the frame, didn't we? I think we talked about the frame some last week. So if you go on some of the past Facebook pages, you'll see us talking about sandblasting the frame. I know we talked about sandblasting it. Whether we talked about painting it, I don't know. But you're going to paint a frame, bare metal. Remember, use a etching primer, self-etching primer. It's got a little acid in the primer. So if you go on bare metal, make sure you get an acid etching primer, self-etching primer. That way the paint will stick. So we sandblasted this one. We got it all painted this weekend. Now we're back to putting it together. So when you go to putting one together, this car came to us. Larry had the car looking good. It was all assembled. He got it to that point, had brake lines running, and it looked like a car when it got here, but it wasn't painted. He had some paint on it, rattle can paint. So we got it the color he likes. Very nice color. I like it. I mean, I got an old truck I'm fixing to paint. I think I'm going to pick this color, an old 79 Chevy, but it looks good. Needs a little primer here, but we got a little chrome, we got a little paint. You can kind of see in the back. At this point, we haven't got to the board yet to make a list of everything to do, but it's time to get methodical again. When you start putting things together, it's time to be methodical. Make sure you get all the bolts in, make sure you get the bolts tight, make sure you run in a pattern. One hint I've given before, and I'm going to give it again. When you get your radius rods on and your axle on, this bolt back here in the back of the rod end, once this one is in, this one should slip right in. If that radius rod's up or down just a little bit, you need to adjust it in the clevis. You can't. It's easy to pull it up or push it down, but if you do that, you're going to put a torsion in your whole axle, and in doing that, you're going to have the car leaning one way or another. We have Slingshot Steering. We were talking about Larry's car, and Larry, we didn't forget about you. I'll call you today. I know you got some ideas on your car, but we're kind of on hold on it for a day or so, and we got a couple other things to move ahead with. But Larry's car, it's got a little different steering. It's got a cross steer. This car here has got what's called Slingshot Steering, where your Vega box, which is over here, Spirit uses a Vega box, goes across, and it steers what looks like a slingshot, and then your drag link will come across and steer your right wheel. We'll set toe ends and all that after. We've got the rear end set up in here. Coil-over shocks. We use a spring rate, and it can vary, but our spring rate in the rear is 250. You can go a little less if you like it to be softer. You really probably don't want to go too much more.
150. You said 250.
Oh, I'm sorry, 150 on the spring rate. Josh is a number guy. Yeah, if you went any more than 250 or 250, you'd be pretty heavy duty. So don't forget a Panhard rod in the back. I mean, we use a Panhard in the front because it can swing on the shackles a little bit, but on the back, your whole axle without a Panhard rod, your whole differential would swing, just huge swings, and your frame would actually flip over and come up past center and flip one way or another. So we got our Panhard rod. You want this, it's kind of a, I mean, this is fine angle. You don't want to get too much more radical angle down like that. If you can get it about even, that's okay. Make sure on your Panhard rods that you're going to have the travel, if you're making your own, that your rear end doesn't come up and hit the panhard. If you get it too parallel, that's a good chance that could happen. A vent. Rear end needs to have a vent. Spirit. If you buy a Spirit kit, generally, this is a 10-bolt Chevy in here. What we're going to use is a used rear end, and unlike a lot of the other companies, they'll sell you the housing and you'll have to buy all the axles and all the components for it. We leave it complete, and when we buy our rear ends, we buy them in quantity. We try to get good ones, and then we check them. We don't put one in that's just obviously junk. But what we're selling you is the housing, and we're just giving you everything else free. So when you get a Spirit kit, you don't have a lot of extra stuff to buy on your brakes. These drum brakes, obviously, it's got new brakes on it, new rotors. Sometimes your drums will be good when you get it from us, and you just get them turned. Sometimes you may not have drums. Again, we're not selling them to you, but these components are pretty cheap. We use an S10 rear end is what it is. The S10, a regular one, full wheel, is 48 inches, backing plate to backing plate. And if we're doing a 27 like this is, we'll use an S10 full wheel drive Blazer, and that'll be 52 inches. So this one here is a 27. We use that in a 27. It needs to be a little wider, so this will be the 52-inch rear end, and it clears everything that way. We're coming around. We're putting brakes on. The customer ran his brake line, so he came down, split it in the middle, and ran both his lines going on the middle of the differential. If we did it, we might come down just on this side. You'll need to have a braided cable coming in, because remember your differential is going to move up and down. So you'll have a braided cable with an AN fitting. They may be sitting here somewhere.
It's probably in his cabinet.
Yeah, again, organize your parts. If you don't have parts sitting all over the place, it makes your job go a lot faster. While we're looking at brakes, we might as well talk about them just a little bit. As I say often, I reference everything to Spirit kit. We've designed and engineered it our way, but we can do some modifications so that the brake pedal actually comes up through the floor, and you'll have your brake pedal. The steering column will come up next to it, so you can actually right foot brake. So the column will come up on the left side of that, and then you have your gas pedal up here. There's a rod that comes down under. This is a Mustang 2 master cylinder. We also use a power brake setup with a booster. It would be the little mini booster with it has a Corvette master cylinder on that. On our T-buckets, the front end is real light, so what we do is we put a proportioning valve on the front. So what the proportioning valve does, it just cuts down the pressure on the front brakes so that it stops equal. That's the goal, is to have it stop. And you don't want your front brakes locking up on a slick floor like this or on a gravel. What will happen is your brakes will lock up and your front end will push. You won't be able to steer it, and then just push forward. We like to use a pressure switch for your master cylinder. So this is a pressure switch. It looks like he's put residual valves on here. The theory is, on a residual valve, if your master cylinder is below your wheel cylinder, that it could bleed back, but it's a closed system, and I have never had any problem not using residual valves. But what this does, this keeps about a couple pounds of pressure on the brake cylinders, so it keeps a little bit of pressure on it so it can't bleed back. Other than that, we're coming ahead pretty good on this car. Once we get to this place, the next step, I'll get the chassis fully built, and like Kevin did, it's a good idea if you've not built one before to assemble your car. It doesn't take that long. It took us less than a day to blow it apart, and we started on this morning, so you can see how far we've gotten already, and it's 11 o'clock or a little after, so we're getting pretty far on the car. It's about ready to have the motor come in. So put your car together, get everything fitting. We can do it a couple of ways. If you do get a Spirit car, we can actually put your steering column in, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit before we finish. Your hole for your steering column, your hole for your brake pedal, everything fitting. We know everything's fitting because it was fitting. Had the radiator on. He's going to do 2 grill shells. He's going to do a 23 grill shell and a 34 style grill shell, which will both fit on the same radiator. So he'll be able to change the entire look of the car with basically 4 bolts. So he can take one off and put the other one on.
No, Matt, he's putting a 32 grill.
Okay, 32.
So we're going to have to figure that out.
The 34 and the 30 or 23 are the same.
Same, yeah. But the 32,
the 32 is a little bit different. So yeah, we're going to have to, we'll figure something out. But they'll both fit on the same radiator, but they will not fit in the exact same mount holes. So we may have to have a couple different mount holes here, which won't be that big a deal. Probably a couple washers on for the 32 in the bracket, or for the 23, I mean in the bracket.
a lot of questions we get. When you prep a motor, how do you get paint? Because that's what a lot of people say is, do you have to use a high heat paint? Do you use, we get a lot of calls when we sell kits, how do you guys paint your engines?
I was very, very concerned about that when we painted our first motor the color of the car 20-something years ago. And I've been doing it for at least 20 years, painting the motors the color of the car, and have not had a problem because of heat yet. If you've got a problem burning your paint because of heat, you've got a significant motor problem, and burning the paint will be the least of your worries. Obviously, if you get any on a header, that's going to burn off. Try to cover your holes as much as possible. I mean, you can see we have plugs.
If you buy a crate engine, all those plugs will come in.
They'll come in it. Scuff the motor, and if it comes, unless somebody is just canned it with real cheap paint, or we generally scuff the paint that's on the motor and just make sure it's stuck well. Because if they painted the motor from this is a GM crate motor, so you know they should probably figure out how to keep the paint to stick on the motor. So our paint will stick to their paint. A transmission, sand it well, use a etching primer again, it's aluminum housing. This one has the aluminum pan, it came that way. Always be real careful on the pans. If you get an aluminum pan, they're just really hard to seal. They'll have a tendency to have an oil leak, transmission leak, or oil leak. We will, if we're putting the pan on, we'll take and grind the chrome lip of the pan and use gasket sealer. I don't remember, do we get, no, this motor was ready. Does it get aluminum pan, or is it painted?
No, just like that.
So if you're going to keep your same pan, make sure it looks pretty clean under there. This will probably get a chrome cover.
That's another thing. If you ever change your oil pan, we've always had trouble with them China ones, the China chrome still leaking. So make sure you grind, like you said, grind the chrome off.
Grind the chrome off, that's the biggest thing. And there'll be a tendency, if you over tighten one area, you want to kind of kink it. So be careful about that, tighten in a bit of a pattern. We've done, this is our mock-up intake. We use it for putting the motor up to paint it, or we'll use it for our foam block to fit it in the car, whichever we do. I just leave the old valve covers on. This will get valve covers and the dress-up kit, and so we're about ready for that. We'll stick it in, ready to go. Make sure you get your water pumps, all them parts painted. Drive shafts ready to go. Again, this has all been pre-fitted. I would recommend that if you're going to do a first-time home build. It may take you an extra, even 10 hours, but that's time well spent. If you've got to back up and just refit something, or you forgot a bracket, or the hole's in the wrong spot, or something like that, and you have to repaint. Paint is pretty expensive if you're using good paint. And I would definitely recommend using a decent paint. A paint job like this should last. These cars won't be sitting outside. They'll probably be well maintained. It'll last a lifetime. There's no reason the paint is going to fade or anything like that. Okay, so on the on the body itself, you can see we've got what we do, we take a piece of PVC and this is just a tube, it's a 2-inch ID, and that steering column will go right through there. If you look on the car, our steering box is right in the front there. So that'll slide right down the tube. We've already got a notch here for the column to sit in there. There'll be a column drop behind this holding it down here. And this one we did not drill the holes before we painted it. It's easier to paint it like this. We can buff it cleaner, but take and tape it off. Mask it all off when you go ahead and drill your holes. That way there's less chance of you scratching it or something like that. Again, on a Spirit bucket, now they're not all this way. We have our insert, and you can see we've not painted everything. When the seat drops in and the upholstery panels go on, they go all the way up to here. So your paint is going to be well below that. But you need to remember this section of the seat, and I don't believe this one gets a radio. A lot of times we'll put the radio right here. But the carpet's going to go to right here, and the top of the seat will come to here. So this will all show the color of the car. And we try to paint a little bit up into the firewall, even though this gets covered. Carpet will go up to there. But I mean, the cleaner it looks in the places where you just don't look all the time, your judges are definitely going to stick their head up under there and look. So it'll get you some points if you're going to the show. You might as well at least have a nice car there that's going to be pleasing not just to the crowd but to the judges too. It doesn't take that much more effort. On our 27, we've got hidden hinges. I'm cautious to close the door now when it's on a rack like this. It's not necessarily how it's going to fit the car. Once it's bolted secure to the frame, we've got a good gap here, but be careful. If you're taking the body off and you just got it sitting somewhere, it could be flexing somewhere, so careful when you put your doors together you don't just scuff it. So here we go, Kevin, it's getting close. I know last time we were working on it, you gave us a call, and I'm thinking it's going to look a whole lot more like a car by the end of the week, so we'll probably feature this one more time. And we got Larry's car coming together. We've got another Larry's car coming together. I've got 3031 Model A with a grill shell, 32 grill shell. So I've got a hood. I just pulled the mold today to build the part. I'll have it tomorrow to blend and match those. I fitted it up, just holding the mold up there to make sure it works. It's going to work. So I'll get that built, and probably this week we'll show you how to, this would be just a hood cover, how to put that on. That'll be I like the way we do it. It works out well, so it might be something you'd want to do if you're putting a hood on. So for today, that's about it. I did get the yellow books though. I'll give you the thought for the day, and what made me almost forget about you. I'm in the middle of rebuilding the chopper gun. Probably my least favorite thing of all things to do, but we'll get this done, and then back to the chopper gun. So thinking is mental exercise that strengthens our ability to lift heavy thoughts. That's a pretty good one. Thinking is mental exercise that strengthens our ability to lift heavy thoughts. So for all you old guys, I know you're playing them video games all day long. You better put up the video game and just start thinking now. So y'all have a good day. Glad you came, joined us.